Hello and welcome to B&D Now, a podcast about independent game development. I'm your host, Tobiah Marks, and with me today is Jaycee Salinas. Hey, Jaycee.
How's it going, my man?
Pretty good. So, why do you make games?
Well, actually, to clarify, man, I'm actually making a game. This is my first game ever, and it's going to be released for PlayStation consoles. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't really talk too much about it.
But what got you into the games industry? Why do you want to make a game?
Well, basically, I'm making games primarily to basically prove to myself that I don't need like a mountain of debt and a piece of paper mounted on my wall to make a video game. The primary reason.
Mm-hmm.
I did attend Full Sail University. I did their online classes or whatever. But my biggest mistake was that I went in for game design, where I think game development is more what you could utilize Full Sail for. But their online classes don't provide game development, which would be more like programming, I guess, learning C++, C# and all that kind of stuff.
So you learn more of the soft skills, the design around the game and how to lay it out, but you want actually to get in and do the implementation.
Yeah, I wanted to get my hands on let's bring up Unity, teach me Unity, let's do this. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm saying to go to Full Sail for something like that's a complete waste of time. They do not teach you that in any way whatsoever.
Interesting. It's good to know because I've heard good things about Full Sail overall.
Right, and I've met a lot of people going to GDC and Unite more recently, where I did meet people that went to Full Sail, but again, they went to Full Sail for game development or game programming, and they were totally legitimately happy with that. So whenever they hear me, I met some dudes who overheard me saying kind of negative things, I guess, about Full Sail. And they're like, I went to Full Sail and it was awesome. And I was like, well, what did you go for? And then they end up saying programming. And I'm like, that's probably why, man. Full Sail for game design. Game design's an art, and it's not something you can really teach. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think it is something that you can teach, but I think a lot of people don't teach it well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
There's definitely a lot of principles and practices that you should learn in design,
Right.
just like any kind of thing. If you look at artistic design, right? You can say, oh, well, how do you teach design? And you realize, wait, what it really is about is iteration, learning to get stuff out there, learning to communicate with other designers. That's the real thing that you get out of a school is not just how to come up with a design, but how to communicate that design to others.
Right. And Full Sail for game design was none of that. Yeah, and the reason I say this is our first month of class was, and I'm going to lay this out first real quick, is that I actually dropped out after a year because I started seeing these continuous patterns. But for example, the first month of class was spent learning how to set up your computer. And
Just in
turn
setting
it
up
on.
office kind of thing,
Yes, exactly. Turn it on. This is how you go to the forums. This is how you sign up for whatever. A whole month was spent on that, man. That
doesn't bode well right there.
Nope, not at all, man. And
Interesting.
yeah, the second month was interesting only in the fact that it was, if I remember correctly, it was our English class because they do their. I don't know how familiar you are with their curriculum or whatever.
I'm not really.
Yeah,
I'm on the other side of the country.
exactly. And yeah, so I took the online classes, so I was able to do it from home in El Paso. So,
I bet you that actually makes a big difference because I've taken an online course before. I took an online course at business at Intro to Business 101, whatever, at a community college, and it's actually one of the reasons why I went out and started my own company.
Right.
Is that I took this near the end of my school just for the credits, and I thought, oh, hey, starting a business is kind of easy.
Yeah.
And it surprises me how easy online classes are. They lower the difficulty so much. Just getting people to go and type a paragraph is an accomplishment. Unfortunately, It's really hard to motivate students when they have no connection to the professor and the professor has no connection to them, no recourse if they don't do anything.
Right.
And to be fair, the audience is different. People taking online courses tend to be already working full time and they're doing it on the side, and they have full lives and are not, able to dedicate as much time. And I understand that. It's not trying to knock people who take online courses, but certainly the students who don't commit to their work favor online versus in person. So as someone who commits to their work, it's harder to be in an online situation.
Right. Yeah. No, I absolutely get that. Totally, man. And I guess you could kind of say that about the way the Full Sail classes were scheduled, because yeah, it was every month was focused on a specific, not topic, but I guess specific, I guess just a class, right? So the second month was English class, and or I think that was the third month. But either way, the third month was you basically just wrote a review for a video game, or you chose a topic also to talk about that was kind of like in the news at the time. So I run my own blog, and doing something like that was super interesting and fun because I like doing that already. But I guess the bar that they were setting in terms of how, what you're going to write about or whatever the case was, like you mentioned, it goes back to the individual, right? In terms of like what their like passion or what their goal is for what they're writing about. So you would kind of see how some people, their reviews weren't very well written, or they were kind of, I guess for lack of a better term, like half-assed. Does that make sense? Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was, I guess it's a strong word, but it was kind of demoralizing.
All right. So you're at the school, you didn't like it, you quit
Yeah.
after a year.
Right.
What happened next?
After that, I basically, I have this buddy who I met at a bar down the street from my place, and he was always talking about how he goes to E3 and he always gets to meet all these cool people. But what happened was he invited me to E3 one time, and I rarely knew this guy, so he just kind of like brought it up out of the blue, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go with you, whatever. Nothing happened for like say 3 or 4 months. And then he finally called me up and he's like, hey, come with me to E3. And I was like, okay, let's do this. So we ended up going. And by doing that, I was able to meet a bunch of the old 1UP people that I followed back in the day when I, read 1UP.com and all that kind of stuff. And I met Nick Sutner, who is actually part of developer relations at Sony. So we started talking. And at the time, I was, like you mentioned earlier, it's really easy to start up your own company. So that's kind of what I did. I just started, I incorporated my company, and then I just started learning a bunch of tutorials to the point to where I felt like I was comfortable with Unity to make something. And that's what I always wanted to do, is just make something. Put your hands in and just start building.
Yeah, Unity has enabled so many developers to do such great things.
Right. And at the time, though, that's the crazy part, is when I met Nick, he told me, he's like, sign up through our website, and we're doing this indie thing. Obviously, Sony has this big push to do indie stuff. So I signed up, I emailed him, let him know that I signed up, and he's like, all right, let's get you started. And they sent me dev kits, and I'm using Unity to make a game on PlayStation 4 and PS3 and PS Vita.
Very cool.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was super easy.
And how, like, are you just a one-man team? Do you have other people?
Yeah, no, I'm just by myself, learning everything at my own pace. And granted, it's a quick pace because I want to get this done as soon as possible. But
have you hired contractors at all, or?
Nope. No, man, I do everything myself.
So you're entirely self-funded?
Yeah, I mean, I have a day job that I have to do, obviously to pay the bills or whatever. But that's what's helping me pay for, or that's what's helping me pay for bills and let me focus on my game stuff outside of that.
Very cool. Yeah. So how long's the game in development
now? Ever since, I guess, probably full on development, I would say January of this year.
All right. So like 9 months about.
Right. Because I spent the first, like from E3, from the minute I met Nick, I spent that time to about November learning Unity.
And you're doing this part-time since you have a day job, so that, of course, makes development take a lot longer.
Exactly, yeah. So that is kind of the reason it's taken so long, but I kind of feel like I've accomplished a lot within that time, where if I, say if I didn't have the day job, I would have gotten so much more done. But I'm sure that's the same with just about anyone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So how much longer do you think you'll be working on the game before you can announce it,
Um,
release it?
right. Well, I had a full on like tutorial level basically set up that I submitted to PAX.
Hmm.
So
For the
that
PAX 10?
yeah, PAX 10. Unfortunately wasn't selected, but I give that to just my kind of eagerness of trying to submit before it was really necessarily fully fleshed out.
Yeah, I mean the PAX 10 is usually really fleshed out games. So if your game is in like alpha state,
Yeah.
uh, try experimenting to the IGF. They're a lot more favorable to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So
I
yeah, I
think they're
mean
opening up
that's
submissions pretty soon. Actually, I think that's in October.
oh yeah, yeah, I've definitely got my eye on that, man. I gotta. That's how I set myself. That's how I set goals for myself. Is like when is a deadline for PAX Prime? When's a deadline for this? And then I start to build towards that.
Hmm.
So basically, that's kind of the idea. Is the build I had for PAX has completely changed. So it hasn't necessarily set me back because I basically did set up a huge chunk of the game. Like the mechanics and everything are still there. Like I said, I wish I could explain it in detail, but I just can't at the moment. Um,
Fair enough. Fair enough. You
right,
have the
right. I
agreements.
really wish I could, yeah, because I honestly would love to get like your feedback on it. Because at Unite, I did get to talk to dudes who like I explained it to, and they were totally into the idea. But I can't explain it to you simply because it's obviously a recorded show, and I talked to my account manager, who's Nick. And I obviously can't talk about specifics, but even though I wish I could,
Well,
man.
let's talk about you then and your development. What's the
Sure.
biggest thing you've learned over the course of this project?
Uh, I don't know, man, how to answer that. I would just say Unity. I mean, just learning Unity is like the idea of game design is so just crazy that Unity helps you kind of see, like, say, for example, when you play like a fully fleshed out AAA game or even like an indie game,
Hmm.
you kind of start to see the patterns, right? In terms of like how colliders react with each other and things like that. So that is basically what I've learned is the interaction between objects and how your UI is connected to, all sorts of different functions and stuff like that.
Yeah, the curtain's been kind of peeled back for you. The more that you get into game development, and realize how things work. It's kind of
Right.
hard to go back and play AAA's again and not like think, okay, there's where the collider is, and they
Right.
designed this out here. It's like if you know a lot about film,
Right.
seeing, okay, this is a medium close up, and we're on a dolly shot right now. And it
Exactly.
doesn't take away my enjoyment. Like if I usually vocalize out loud, like, oh, I really like the camera work here. And like it'll annoy my wife. It's like, hey, just watch the movie. I'm like, no, 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 I am paying attention. I'm really into this. It's kind of cool to watch that and know how it was made.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. And on the contrary, in terms of how you mentioned earlier, it really actually does make you appreciate it even more, as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, you tend to see all the hard work and, like, holy crap, the idea of how they had to animate this person just for this, like, 10 seconds, and it probably took an animator maybe like 8 hours to try and think of what this character would look like grabbing a ledge or whatever the case.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, AAA games
yeah,
have so much work. You start to realize that how, like, okay, this game does take multiple years to make.
right.
But
Yeah,
that's also why the smaller industries like mobile, they're really taking off because it allows developers to make games that it take 6 months, and they can get on the store and iterate them, and they kind of grow big over time. You don't get Temple Run 2 as it is now without the original Temple Run being released and updated over and over again.
right, right.
So,
Yeah.
what
That's
other than Unity, what other tools have you been learning? Have you
um,
doing like Maya modeling? Are you not
no,
doing anything?
it's all 2D sprite based.
Okay.
So I use Photoshop to do all my pixel art. Um, that's the other thing of doing everything yourself is you kind of have to focus on your strengths, and
Hmm.
then well, obviously your strengths come kind of second nature, right? So you really actually focus more on your weaknesses. So one of my weaknesses would be, I guess, art. So I try to find the most efficient way to make art, and by doing that, I've figured that pixel art is pretty rad, just because it's very simplistic, but at the same time, it could be very artistic if done right.
Yeah, you have fewer choices, so it allows for creativity while also being a little easier if that's
Yeah.
how you understand it.
Right, and it helps you kind of minimize instead of like just overthinking this. Say, for example, character where you're going to draw out like a necktie and all sorts of stuff. I mean, you bring it down to pixel art, and it really helps you minimize something, but it still you still have to tell a story within a like a 64 by 64 bit pixel. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
that yeah, that becomes like totally cool. And I'm a musician first and foremost, so like for me, that kind of stuff, like that excites me also when I get to the actual sound design of the game. Uh, and those are tools that I kind of already know just because I've done that for so long. I've been a musician probably longer than I've been alive, if that makes sense.
The longer that I've been alive, I don't know if that makes sense. I'll believe your whole life.
Well, I mean, I am 30. I'm 33, and I've been a musician for for about I don't know 16 years,
Yeah,
17.
your whole life, you basically
Yeah, yeah.
your whole adult uh what's the word I'm looking for? Cognizant life where you've been,
Well, I think
you
subconsciously,
can't
like,
really do much when you're like under 6, right? You kind of do what your
right,
parents tell you
right.
to do.
Well, it was like I think I subconsciously channeled like Cliff Bleszinski because I think I remember there was an article where he once said that he was at Epic longer than he hasn't, and that's probably where it just came from. I don't know, it just spur of the moment, man. But that's how my mind works. I think all random and sporadic like that.
So you mentioned the game's going to be on Vita and consoles. So how's that designing for both a handheld form factor and a TV form factor?
Mostly the biggest issues are basically your UI. Because you're familiar with Unity, I'm sure.
Yes.
Um, the UI is one of those things where, granted, again, also because I'm not 100% efficient or in Unity, um, the UI is basically the biggest factor because you kind of have to do the whole scaling thing. A programmer might actually be listening to me and being like, hey, that's actually the easiest thing.
Are
But
you
to me,
using UGUI or do you have NGUI?
nope, I'm just using straight Unity, like GUI textures
Mm.
and
Yeah,
text and
there's a
stuff.
lot of people who will complain about that,
Yeah,
but
I'm sure they
I mean,
will.
there's also the new coming in 4.6 is the new UGUI stuff.
Hmm.
It's in beta now, and
Oh, right, right, right.
yeah,
In
they've
in Unity,
improved
right?
it a lot. Is
Yeah,
the word?
yeah. Because at Unite, I took the training day, and we actually went through their new UI system, and I'm like, oh my god, if we only had that. I don't know if you're familiar with console development with Unity. We're actually tied to 4.3.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, because
yeah,
you're stuck in the older version right now.
exactly. And we don't have any of that UI function unless you
You'll
use
get
stuff.
merged
Yeah.
back in, I believe, in 5.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And that I don't even know if they've announced a date for that, but that probably will still be behind the official release. So that probably won't even come to us like console dudes
Hmm.
till I don't know. I guess maybe
Well,
February.
let's talk about like NGUI. Have you trolled the asset store for stuff yet?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I haven't used any stuff. I kind of like doing all my stuff from scratch because I like to learn that stuff.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, are you familiar with Ngui? Because I've heard a lot of it, but I haven't used it personally.
I wouldn't say that I have a lot of depth, but I own it and I've been using it in some side projects and experiments I've been building, and it is unquestionably better and worth the cost.
Okay.
Now,
Um,
compared to the new GUI that Unity is going to come out in 4.6,
right.
if I was a developer right now, how long can you wait? But if you're doing console development, you're going to be stuck in 4.3.
Exactly.
It's way. I would recommend checking it out. Actually, there's a lot of plugins on the store
Hmm.
of problems that have already been solved already. People in
Right.
your position, people who they made a game, they solved it, they made a solution, and as a great way of monetizing their game in addition to releasing and doing whatever they're going to do with it, they
Right.
sell those parts and tools, and that just saves you months of development time. Now, if your goal of the project is to learn,
Hmm.
it's different. I want to learn how to do my own GUI. Well, you might not learn as well if you just use someone else's tools. But as a business point of view, it just makes so much sense to exchange a small amount of money to save you tens of hours of work.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. And what I'm saying in terms of like learn it myself is more in the sense of like say if NGUI something happens where we get a build, right, a new beta build that, or I guess not beta, but it's beta in console speak or whatever.
Hmm.
But if we get a build and something breaks within NGUI, I am at the whim of the developer of NGUI. So I now have to wait for him to fix whatever that bug was, where I have no idea how to figure out what broke with that particular plug.
I don't know if I buy that argument because, like, yes, that's true, but the amount of time that you spend that, oh no, there's this bug and I am not the one that fixes it versus the amount of time you spend owning it and doing it all yourself.
Right.
Like, you're going to spend less time fixing someone else's broken code than you are going to be making it from scratch.
Right.
And as mentioned before by pixel art, limited scope, limited ability fosters creativity. Okay,
Right.
I can't do that with this plugin anymore, but you can make a game that's going
Right.
to do. I mean, this is an argument for Unity itself. Still talk to developers who are like, I got to do the whole engine myself because I'm, at the whim of Unity of what they're going to update or put into it. But, you make a game in a month in Unity. You work on your engine for a month in, your own straight C++, C Sharp, whatever you're doing code.
Right.
Your game's barely going to work in a month, and the Unity game is far and gone and ready to be shipped.
Right. And you know what? It's funny that you do keep pushing that idea because it is true that the one plugin that I have used from the asset store, and I'm going to give this guy as much credit as possible because it's exactly like you mentioned. It just fostered creativity in my design. Was I use a plugin called In Control. Have you heard of In Control?
No, I haven't.
In Control is amazing, man. What it does is it helps you basically. What this guy did is he programmed basically every single controller that you could think of into this plugin, and it lets you plug in a DualShock 4, an Xbox 360 controller, an Xbox One.
Oh,
Even
that's really handy.
exactly. Even something as random as those Logitech, game pads. And you plug it in, and you test the inputs on whatever device. So I push, say, for example, to the PS4. It'll tell me what access and all the different buttons and source, controls and all that kind of stuff. And then I basically go back, re-edit some of the scripts that he has, and the controller works like nothing. So you can use right bumpers, left bumpers, touch screens. He actually recently implemented touch controls and stuff. So a lot of that stuff is also now kind of universal. So you can basically program to one control input, and it works on any device that has that type of input.
See, that's a really smart way to do that, especially
Yeah,
because
it-
we live in a cross-platform world and you don't make the
Exactly.
games for one screen anymore.
Right, right.
Or at least you shouldn't unless you have a very justifiable reason to.
Right, right, right. And yeah, I mean that's kind of the idea of In Control is it just helps you basically do that. The interesting thing, like you mentioned with NGUI, is did you know that Unity actually, I don't know how to say this, but like bought the guy who made.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, so
The
that
Unity
is-
GUI is absolutely based on NGUI.
Yeah, it's awesome, man.
'Cause it
So
was like the most popular plugin ever.
yeah, with,
Well, that's okay. Let me put a caveat there. I don't know if that's true, but amongst everyone I've talked to, NGUI is a must buy and they own it. So
right, exactly.
it's certainly one of the most popular, if not the most popular.
Yeah, definitely
For a
smart
reason.
on their part. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so you've been doing this for a little while now. You've been learning. What would you say was the worst moment you've had as a company so far?
I really don't know, man.
You haven't had any like file loss, version control disasters, or anything?
No, mostly just disasters in my head when it comes to like coding and like being frustrated in terms of like how do I pull this off? Like how does this work? And then but the thing is I eventually learn what my problem was and I'll fix it and I just get over it and I'm done. I don't know. I mean, I guess I could say the biggest thing is just the business end of stuff. All the legal stuff, having to sign crap that you don't want to waste the time reading through. It's just, like NDAs and stuff like that.
Hmm.
That kind of stuff I could really care less for. If I could hire someone to just do that portion of it, I'd be cool with that.
There are people that do that. They are called business majors.
Right. Yeah. But again, it comes back to the financial thing of,
Yeah, exactly. Are you going to
yeah,
pay someone full time just to handle the paperwork, or are you going to learn it yourself and do it even though you don't like it?
exactly. But you know what? See, that's the thing, is that a lot of people get scared off by stuff like that, where I don't get scared off. I just kind of like, I see it and I'm like, this is a problem I need to solve. How do I solve it? Okay, done. It's out of my way now. You
Hmm.
know, that one of the things I learned at GDC this year actually was that I met a lot of developers that were like that. For example, when I told them that I was developing for Sony platforms, they were surprised, especially when I told them that I've never developed a game before, ever. Um, and that I already had dev kits, and I already had something running on the system.
Yeah, we kind of glossed over that, but that is really a unique situation.
Right, right. Um, it was really, like I said, it's just something where if you put your mind to it, you really can do it, right? Granted, if it kind of sucks to say, but it's like the right time at the right place at the right time kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that element of luck, but luck is coupled with putting yourself into position to let good things happen to you, things that
Right.
you want to have happen. Get yourself out there, talk to the right people, know the
Right.
right person at the right time.
Exactly. And just knowing that this is definitely something you want to do, and that it's that you have to deal with you have to go into it with like realistic like goals and terms, right? For example, I'm not expecting to make a lot of money, if any at all, but like I said, my primary reason is to prove to myself that I can do this without the waste, again, personal opinion, but the waste of a uh, piece of paper that I put on my wall that cost me a lot of money, where I didn't feel I learned anything.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not one to diss a piece of paper. I have some
Mhm.
paper. I think
Absolutely.
papers are
I'm
good
not,
to get. I think there's a lot of really good schools out there, but
exactly.
you don't have to have one in order to make something. But you do have to prove yourself.
Exactly. And that, I think, is the most important part. Um, and I think that's the thing, man. Is I feel like that's what I've kind of accomplished. I've accomplished more since I've left Full Sail than I ever did while I was at Full Sail. If that makes sense, I just feel like while I was at Full Sail, I was just sitting, listening to people. Where after I left Full Sail and I met Nick and I got these dev kits, it felt like this is real. Now I have to do this.
Well, it is real. You're just jumping,
Yeah.
head first and learning it. I mean,
And
that's a great way to go for
yeah,
anything.
exactly. That's personally how I work. I prefer to just learn by, falling on my face, and it's like, okay, I don't do that next time. Let's do it this way.
All right. Well, so
Yeah.
what if I had a time machine?
Hmm.
I could take you back in time. You're just starting out at Full Sail.
Right.
Besides, quit now.
Hmm.
What do you tell yourself?
Learn Unity and forget about Game Maker.
Interesting. Why hate on Game Maker specifically?
It's not hate. I really appreciate Game Maker. Game Maker is actually what I started on.
It's a
And that,
great tool. I will sing its praises along with Unity. It's
yeah,
really
absolutely.
good.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's awesome. And that's why I started with it, because it's very 2D based. And I
Hmm.
knew from the beginning I did not want to deal with 3D space. And I knew that from the beginning my game was going to be a 2D game. Again, no details, but that's what my vision was, right? So Game Maker was perfect. The problem, or the reason I switched to Unity, was because PlayStation at the time did not support Game Maker. They do now, actually. Um, and for the most part, they are the better choice because they don't charge a license fee whatsoever.
Yeah,
Uh,
Unity has a really good pricing model that's
exactly,
really good for indie developers.
exactly, and
Game
also,
Maker does too, to be fair. It's not that costly.
no, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, the barrier to entry on Game Maker is really nothing, because there is a free version of Game Maker. You just can't publish to I think it's mobile devices.
Yeah, they just restructured it, so I forgot what
Oh,
they limit it now. I think it usually is like just like desktop, and then you pay per
right.
platform otherwise.
Right, right. And even that, if I'm not mistaken, granted, yeah, I haven't seen what the price range is. I have the full license that was going to guarantee it for future updates also.
Hmm.
So I'm not familiar with what the price differences are now, but I can almost guarantee there's still very, very just good prices.
No, absolutely. But as you said, it took them a bit to get caught up with the consoles. Unity
Mhm.
was kind of there first.
Right.
And they also have different strengths. They do different things well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You got the right tool for the right job. You can't
Yeah.
universally compare A is better than B. They kind of sit together, right?
Right. And even more so between Unity and GameMaker. They are completely different engines with their absolute strengths and absolute weaknesses. It just you have to go in knowing what your project is going to be
Hmm.
and then choose accordingly, right? And both versions have free versions, right? So you can jump in with either one of them
Yeah,
and
no reason not to try, not to start.
exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Going back to the meeting developers at GDC, uh, meeting those guys and seeing how most of those guys are like legitimate, straight up computer programmers, man. Programming to the metal on whatever device they were programming on. Granted, there were also a lot of Unity dudes and stuff, but uh, yeah, I mean, a lot of what happened with the people I met was they were really uh, they were afraid of going to like a console platform because of having to incorporate and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
that part seems like the easiest requirement. I run into that all the time.
right. Yeah, so that's one of those things is like, if you set yourself with this barrier, right? It's not Sony didn't give you a barrier, you gave yourself that barrier. All it is something you have to overcome. I don't know what the different state requirements are
Yeah, some states are definitely harder to incorporate than others. Sometimes you don't necessarily need to incorporate. There's a lot of other options of sole proprietorship or LLC, but that depends on the exact nature of the agreement and how you're making the company and how you're forming it and any other legal problems you might have with shares. But it's just a book away. It's just an online class at a community college, Intro to Business 101 away,
Yeah.
which has discussed that's actually pretty easy to do. You can pass that class no problem.
Right, right.
All right, excellent, excellent advice. I can't wait to hear more about the game itself.
Oh, I
But let's
can't.
talk about the games that we've been playing lately. For myself, I just finished up The Walking Dead Season 2 from Telltale Games, which is fantastic. And I don't want to talk specifics because I don't want to spoil it. But if you haven't played Season 1 yet, get it and play it now. It's amazing. 400 days, the mini expansion in the middle, absolutely get it. You won't know how it ties in until Season 2, but your choices matter. Season 2, they did a lot more with making those choices come back. And some people complain because it's still linear. It's
Mhm.
not like Mass Effect where there's just tons of different options. But I like the fact that the what changes is subtle. It's people's attitudes towards each other. It's different lines that they'll say, and it's the same general movie, but uh, different. I don't want to spoil it too much about like who might live or die or what gets replaced, but they get more major by the end of season 2. That's for sure. The last episode of season 2, in particular, has a lot of divergence.
And in season 2, you play as Clementine, right?
Yes, you play
Okay.
as Clementine.
All right. Yeah, because I have season 1, on my Steam account. I think it's 400 days was the expansion you said.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have that sitting there also, man. But I have not gotten around to it at all. And I
Well,
bought
it's
it
maybe a
long.
little bit of a spoiler, but Clementine will live if you don't, I think actually if Clementine dies, you have to restart the game. It's kind of
Uh,
she's the main character of the first season. So the
okay.
second season, you end up playing as her, just because she was the main focus anyway, and now she's a little more capable. She's very, very young in the first season.
Well, I found that interesting because I think BioWare did that obviously with Mass Effect also, where your character can die, but they still bring them back because they are still the most integral part of the story. I guess
Yeah.
I find that kind of weird how developers still choose to bring characters back even though they allow them to die.
Well, I mean, basically, if you did die, it's game over. Like the game is designed for this character to live, and it's notable because usually it's the case with all the main characters that they're going to live, but not in this one. The main characters can die,
Right. Huh.
which
Yeah.
it's an amazing game, especially since you already own it. Like you just need to block it out, and it's great because it's episodic, so you only need to put like 3 hours at the most, more likely 2 hours or less into each episode, so you can just play one a week or one a night and get through it really quick.
Yeah, I might have to do that, man. Because like I said, it's sitting there. I just have not gotten around to it. It's like that whole thing where people say once you start making games, you don't have time to play games.
Yeah, that is just bull. That's why I always,
Yeah.
I bring up playing games every episode to remind people you have to play games. You have
Yeah.
to learn from the design. You have to
Exactly.
get inspired by other people.
Right. Yeah, and I'll completely 100% back that up. And I always give myself time to do that also because, yeah, like if it wasn't for my job, I would be doing the game during the day and playing games at night. So I still give myself that. You know, for example, I kind of ignore my job as a job because it's the most mundane job anyone could ever do. It's just quality control kind of crap. And so I actually get to do some of my design work while I'm at work. So that's kind of cool.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, absolutely.
As long as, work's okay with that. Not any
Oh, yeah.
legal issues there.
No, no, not at all, man. It's not like I actually met a lot of people at Unite who had issues like that where they work at Amazon or Microsoft and they can't work on anything outside because I guess basically the company owns their
Well,
IP.
I know from what I know, Amazon has a very strict policy on that, but Microsoft's actually very, very open because I do my own stuff on the side, and we have a very open moonlighting policy as long as it's not competing with the company. And making your own games is enhancing the platform using our tools. That you don't even have to make for Microsoft platforms. You can just make games and be a better programmer, and that's not competition in Microsoft's mind. So they have a very good moonlighting policy.
Cool, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, talking about games. What have you been playing?
I've been playing some Destiny.
How have you liked it? I've heard mixed.
Yeah, well, that's I mentioned it on my podcast last week where it's the most boring game that I love to keep playing.
Yeah,
And
that is pretty much what I've heard about it. That it's like, they're not hooking me or engaging me, but I'm going to keep playing anyway.
yeah, and it just goes down to the basic fact that Bungie makes a great shooter. Like there's something about the visceral connection with their weapons to the enemies and the jumping around and the movement of, the all that kind of stuff. Their whole like 30 seconds of fun kind of thing, right? Like they just nail that. It's a lot of fun, but in the overall scheme of things, yeah, it's not that great. And I don't mean that with a negative connotation. It's I really don't know how to put it, man. It's just fun to play, but there's not much you're really doing.
So, would you recommend someone buy it? Like, is it worth a bargain bin later?
I I don't I don't know, man. Like I've had that same discussion with a couple of my friends where I try to tell them it's this really awesome game, but not if you're playing by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? I mean, yeah, because
Well, I mean, it's like Borderlands, right? Like, you don't play Borderlands alone. That's not how that works. You have to play with friends.
I might be the exception to that just because I did play Borderlands 2, as a matter of fact, by myself.
Oh yeah, I find
Yeah,
that interesting because, like, to me, that is like that single player isn't there just because they had to have it, not because the designers want you to play it alone.
right. Yeah, and I could see that, but for some reason, I don't know. Maybe it's just the world that they created is just interesting enough, and the weapons that they have are so varied to where you could get a gun that is completely worthless, but then 2 minutes later you'll destroy some dude and you get this weapon that is completely awesome and totally different from the weapon you had beforehand. So I don't know. Maybe that's what engaged me, and just I kept playing it and playing it and playing it.
Yeah, as you said, core 30 seconds of fun. If you can nail that,
Exactly.
gets players in and they'll sink hours and hours and hours. You got to have that moment to moment fun.
Right. And I'm that kind of a person that would rather leave an open session to where people can join my game. I'm not much of a like I don't join other people's games for the most part, but if they want to join my game, that's definitely fine with me.
Hmm.
just because I tend to like go at my own pace and I like to explore a little more than most people would, to where maybe they just get bored of going off the path that you're supposed to. Yeah, I think Dead Space did that, where it would tell you where to go, and I actually would explicitly go the opposite direction because I knew there must be something hidden down this corridor.
Just because you wanted to explore the other way. I do that all the time just to mess with the game designer and figure out, well, what happens if I do this? It's a little bit of the Q&A in me.
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of have to find other people that play co-op in that same that are in that same like mentality or headspace.
Yeah, because you have to have mesh with the group and what they want to do. That makes a lot of sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the other thing I was playing was Desert Golfing, which is really simplistic but totally awesome. Have you played Desert Golfing at all?
No, I haven't.
Do you have an Android phone or an iPhone?
I got everything, man.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, check it out on either one. I think it's 99 cents on Android. It's $1.99 on iOS, but it's basically it's one of the like a perfect example of the type of game I like, where it instantly starts. There's no menu screen, there's no options, nothing. You start up the game and it's basically like golfing in the desert. So all your controls are pull down and then just aim towards the hole, and that's it. That's all it is. But it's so much fun to just kind of play here and there when you're like, on the subway. Or
is it like a Zen thing, or is it like wacky golfing?
Its art style is super simplistic and it's not wacky. But my buddy Zach, who was on my podcast last week, was talking about it, and he said that he's like on his 300th hole, and the whole game, it's nothing but desert. But on the 300th hole, there's like this random cactus that appears. And you're just like, what the hell? That came out of nowhere.
Oh, so it's like referencing to Desert Bus stuff.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's completely weird, and it's really simple. The design is completely simple, but it's awesome.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's totally rad for $1.99 or 99 cents.
Oh, I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if listeners out there want to check out more about the podcast, they can go to beindynow.com and get past episodes, show notes, all that cool stuff. If you want to find more about me, you can go to my blog, tobiahmarks.com, where I have developer resources, cool stuff like that, or follow me on Twitter at tobiahmarks. Where can we find more about Ask an Enemy?
AskAnEnemyStudios.com or at Ask an Enemy on Twitter.
Cool. And you have a podcast too? You should plug that.
Yeah, it's also at askanenemy.com or askanenemy.com or askanenemy.com.
Excellent. That makes it nice and simple.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you so much for being on the show, Jaycee.
Thank you for having me, man.
All right. For everyone else out there, go out and make some games.